This is More to Say with Randy Naughton. Interesting conversations with interesting people. Welcome into another edition of More to Say with Randy Naughton. So glad you're on this podcast journey with me. We're all learning about this together. And one thing I know that I can do is yap. I got the gift of gab, and I love to talk to people, and I love to interview people and have great conversations. And a lady I've known for many, many years, a member and a guest with us a long time on Fox 2, is our next guest. This is Mary Clarke. She is the co-founder with her husband, Jeff, and director of Mother Model Management. Hello. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, I love it. Yes,
All
we've
right.
had.
Let me interrupt you first of all, because I think Taylor Swift tried to put the red lip on the map. You've perfected that for years and years. It's perfect.
I can't live without it. I don't know. You know how you just get used to something. You go, this
Yes.
is just me.
You wear it well, but I did interrupt and I apologize. So let's talk about the modeling world in general. You and your husband, Jeff, were in Iowa, right? And you decided to start looking at people going, oh, you're pretty, you're nice, you'd make a good model. You wouldn't make a good model. How did this all begin and how long ago?
Well, over 30 years ago, hard to believe, I started first. I'll do a really little short too of how I met Jeff, but I needed models for my friend was a hairstylist and she would do these hair shows. So I was like, oh, I can help you find models. And then I started doing fashion shows at the local mall and it was just fun. And I just did it. I wasn't making money. It was just fun. And I needed models. Then I started to find models, and through a long story that I won't go into, ended up realizing, oh, there's an actual business in the fashion world where you look for new faces. And for whatever reason, I kind of had a gift for that. I met Jeff in 1997 on a 4-hour layover from LA to Iowa in St. Louis.
No kidding.
When you used to leave the airport because you didn't have to go through security, and Northwest Plaza was a mall and he was managing a store there. And I quote unquote discovered him. Scandalous. Anyway. So started that he was potentially going to be a model. That was in January of 1997. And then in February of 1997, I discovered Ashton Kutcher at a bar in Iowa. Then the
back up. You said Ashton Kutcher. Of course, that 70s show, Punk'd. He's a movie star. He's an activist. He is a huge A-lister in Hollywood. Got to tell the story of how you looked at a very young Ashton Kutcher at the time and said, hey, I think you've got something.
I was out with a group of my young models. We went to a place called the Airliner in Iowa City. And I was at this crossroads of going, can this be a business, or do I need to get like a normal people job? Like I was literally at this crossroads and I saw him. We were at the line to pay to get in the door. And I saw him on the first level of this place called the Airliner. And I said to the girls who were with me, wow, he's cool. And one of the girls goes, oh, I know him. That's Chris Kutcher. Ashton is his middle name.
Right.
He was like, I don't know. She was like, why do you think he's cool? When we got inside, I kept thinking, if I see him again, I'm going to go up to him. So on the second level, I went up to him. He was ordering a beer, and he had on a flannel shirt and a puka shell necklace. I'll never forget it. And like a frat boy haircut.
Right out of that 70s show.
Literally was already dressing the part. And I said, have you ever thought about being a model? And then I kept asking him because I always am like, how old are you and how tall you are? That's kind of where you start. And he kept avoiding the question. And I was getting kind of annoyed. And then the bartender walked away and he goes, I'm 19. I'm not old enough to be buying this beer. Like just, it was hilarious.
You almost had him busted.
I did almost have him busted. Then we stood at the bar and talked for like 10 minutes. And he told me he knew who I was because he was originally from Cedar Rapids and that he wanted to be an actor. And I said to him, well, this is a great way to potentially segue into it. And this was back in the day of answering machines. I wrote down I didn't even have a business card. I wrote down my information on a napkin. And then like 3 days later, I remember coming in the office and there was a message from him on the answering machine. And when I called him back, it was a frat house at the University of Iowa.
Love it.
And by that July, I took him to New York. And by that following January, he had that 70 show. It happened that fast.
That's amazing. Now, obviously, his career has taken a huge trajectory. Do you keep in
Yes.
touch with him at all? Run into him at all?
Yes, I do keep in touch with him. I just had a really amazing conversation with him 2 weeks ago.
Uh-huh.
Um, you want to know what's great about him is, first of all, he was thrust in at 19 years old. And then I remember we've stayed connected this whole time. Same with Jeff. We're very close. It's that kind of friendship that if you haven't talked to him in 6 months, but you pick up the phone, it feels like you just had a conversation. He hasn't changed. When he was in the time when he was married to Demi, we got to go to these couple of kind of fabulous Hollywood kind of things where you're like, this is insane. And then when him and Mila started to date, I felt like he came back to that Iowa sensibility because she's just she's the least celebrity I've ever met. She's really lovely. And they're a wonderful couple and they're raising a wonderful family. And he's done so much good.
Yes,
Anyway,
he has.
he's
It's
a good
fantastic.
guy. He's a great guy. I
So
can't.
I was reading your bio and I see a lot of the descriptions of what you do starts with, hey, we discovered Ashton Kutcher and of course supermodel Karlie Kloss, who
Yes.
is a St. Louisan who I don't see her do much modeling anymore. I know that you
Yeah,
don't really keep in touch with her much anymore.
not really. I
Yeah.
mean, we cross paths too. We kind of travel in some circles, but we have models that have had models that are decades long. And I think for her, it kind of has segued into a different place. So for
Right.
everybody, it's a little bit different.
Sure, people grow up, they become parents. I know she's doing computer coding and things like
Yeah.
that. I want to talk about the process of discovering people because I remember back in the day, believe it or not, I was a bit of a model back in the 80s, late 70s, early
I
80s.
do believe it. And I've seen the pictures and you're beautiful. And I've told you that before.
I
Yeah.
still have my portfolio and I'm like, oh my
Good.
gosh, oh my gosh. Um,
Good.
but I remember back in the day, you'd open up, 17 magazine and you'd see the ad for John Robert Powers or
Yeah.
Barbizon or what's the other one I wrote down?
Um,
Barbizon, John Casablanca Modeling
yes.
School. And it
Yeah.
even went back as far as Sears Charm School that ladies used to go to back in
Yeah.
from the 40s to the 70s. And it's
Yeah.
like, it is so different now.
So
How do
different.
you actually discover somebody?
Well, last night we went to an event and we walked in and first you go, there's a very tall human being right here. There's a very tall girl. So, first of all, you notice height.
Right.
We discovered people and I've discovered somebody in traffic court that went on to do some things. I've been at a drugstore. We've been at a gas station in Hannibal, Missouri, where we found a guy who went on to do Versace jeans campaign. You just get in the place where you're always looking and you look for initially height plays a factor because for us it's fashion editorial. So height is part of that.
Which
You look,
means mainly runway, right?
well, it's both. It's fashion, print, and runway. Now, back in the day, it used to be that you could just be a runway model or just be print. It's very much kind of, if you're in that fashion landscape, you do both to varying degrees. And the minimum usually, now every once in a while, there's somebody that like a Kate Moss or somebody who is less than 5'9", but generally speaking, 99% of the time, 5'9" to 5'11" is like the height for girls. And then for guys, it's like 6'1", 6'3". So you look for a certain look and we look for somebody who's pretty or beautiful, but interesting because the people that select the models that we look for are looking for Gucci and Dior and those types of brands. And so they don't want somebody who's just typically pretty.
Cookie cutter, right?
Yeah.
Gorgeous high cheekbones, full lips, wide set eyes, models. And I go back to Lauren, I
I,
can't remember. Yes, with
Look,
the gap tooth. People are like, you can't be a model. You have a gap in your teeth.
yes,
And, people with skin disorders now,
yes,
people with, disabilities,
yes.
people who are
Body
larger.
type.
What's that?
I said different body types.
Yes, it's come so far.
Oh my gosh, even in the time that we've done it. First of all, one of my favorite things, because Lauren Hutton was a model that I looked up to as just this girl in Iowa who knew nothing about nothing, but I loved to look at fashion magazines. And years ago, when Vogue, actually Karlie did this show when she was maybe 14, 15 years old. Anna Wintour did this event, Fashion Night Out, and it started at Lincoln Center. And they did this beautiful show outside, and there all the supermodels were there. It was this big thing. And of course, we were there hanging out and backstage with Karlie, because at this point she was really young. And then we went out for the show, and Lauren Hutton was sitting nearby where I was. And I literally went up to her and I was like, I fangirled so bad.
That's awesome.
Lauren Hutton, oh my gosh, you're so beautiful. And I love your gap in your tooth and all the things. But anyway, the industry has changed tremendously. And I'm thankful for it. There were times, even maybe 15 years ago, that we would find a girl who would be considered, your skin is too dark.
Yeah.
Like, or we'd find one time we found this beautiful dark skinned girl from Africa who was a student at SLU, and nobody was interested in representing her. And I couldn't believe it at the time, but they would literally say, oh, we already have a Black girl. Like, it
Yeah.
literally was.
Well, supermodel Beverly Johnson, I think, chronicled her trajectory into the modeling world. And it's like, you
Yes,
can't put a Black woman on the cover of a fashion magazine. Well, guess
yes,
what? She was, and many times after that. But that's true. It's like it comes down to Madison Avenue and the marketers and what people are going to buy. And you can and cannot do this.
yes.
Thankfully, it's changed.
Oh, it's changed and it keeps changing. And here's the other really cool thing that's happened. This has happened, I would say it started to happen before COVID. And then in the past year and a half, 2 years, it's really expanded. And that is that when we get a brief from a casting director or from an agency, so we'll place models with agencies around the world, but then we also are in contact with the casting directors who are always looking for that new face to be the new face of this brand. And you'll get a brief and they'll describe what they're looking for.
Right.
It's not just what they look like, but what are their interests? What are they passionate about? Are they like, it's not just, oh, you look beautiful.
Right.
You literally have to have, oh, she's passionate about the ocean and she participates in this and she's studying that and she's traveled and done these things. So it's even that sense of what beauty is within the fashion world is expanding. And that is a really beautiful thing.
I agree.
Yes, so important.
I was watching, because I follow you guys on social media, and I was watching you guys. You were kind of scouring the crowd, the line downtown St. Louis at the Olivia Rodrigo concert, and you're
Yes,
looking at people. I can't remember if it was live or not, but
it
you're
was
handing out
fine.
your card, and you see this tall young lady, gorgeous
Yes.
young thing, very natural face, very, very tall, as I mentioned. But
Yeah,
then some of the comments were, oh my gosh, this is so creepy. What are you guys doing? You're
I know.
groomers, you're this, you're that, you, I mean, I know you have the best intentions, obviously. Some people
Yeah,
like, okay, and they take the card and stuff it in their pocket.
yes.
How many calls do you get from people like that you hand your card to, and maybe calls from their parents like, what are you
Right.
doing? You know what I mean?
It's rare. Well, so let me preface it this way. I'll always say, is your parent here? If they're not, I'll say, give this to your parent. Like, we make every precaution that we can
Yeah.
possibly do. As we shared that day, and it turned that people were, I'm like, I understand that we live in a different day and a different time, but by the same token, I know, because we've been doing it for so long, that this can literally change the trajectory of somebody's life.
Hmm.
Even if they don't want to model forever, they could use this opportunity to see the world or to have the resource to go to college, all the different things. And the other thing is that we'll always say, if it's not right for you, that's okay too. So last weekend we were
Yeah.
in Iowa City. We went back to our stomping grounds where we found many people. And after the search, there was a mom, a dad, a son, and a daughter sitting in this, it's called the Penn Mall, playing chess. Jeff goes, look at that beautiful girl and boy, both children, both were the boy was 12, so young for us, but he could be cast in a movie tomorrow. I just couldn't believe his face. It was unbelievable. It's beautiful long hair. I'm like, you look like you should be in some sort of Twilight movie or something. But anyway, so then I start talking to the daughter, but I'm talking to the mother and the father, and literally I'm like, I know this sounds so crazy and completely out of left field, and they didn't know who we are, and they knew nothing about, like they said, we've never even considered this. It's the same thing that I said that day at the Olivia Rodrigo concert. Know what you're saying no to, because what people's perception of the modeling world is and what it actually is are two very different things.
Yeah.
At the level that we manage models, it can be a career that takes you to places you otherwise could never have imagined. But I also, the other kind of thing that we've told ourselves for many years is we're not in the convincing business, meaning either this is going to be right for you or it's not. Or maybe you do it for a while and you learn a lot about yourself, and that's a wonderful thing too. We have a girl that has modeled in New York for a little less than a year in New York City. And we had a conversation with her literally 2 days ago where she was like, this has been great, but I really am feeling that this is not my passion. This is not what I want to do. And she was so worried about disappointing us, but we were like, you're never a disappointment. You're going to be in our life forever. We love this girl so much. You have to find what's good for you.
Right.
You have
Right.
to find that thing, whatever it is. And I
Yeah.
believe that for everybody, no matter what your age is, you have to find your thing that's for you.
And that goes back to a philosophy I have when I mentor young journalists or TV people or engineer or whomever. I say, and I lived this myself, say yes to everything until
Yeah.
somebody gives you a reason to say no, because the life experience you gain, and it's like, that's not for me. I don't want to do that anymore, blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
So that's exactly to your point. I do want to get to a couple of other points. I
Yes.
know you have other model searches coming up, a fashion camp and a master class, which means
Yes.
you're kind of expanding from the model search thing. So
Yes.
for those who think they want to go to a model search, what are the biggest mistakes that some of these people make when they show up with, a photograph or their Instagram photos? What are the biggest mistakes they make? And what advice can you give them on how they should show up?
Well, number one, we always say come clean face, no makeup, preferably natural hair, just because that's how the industry wants to see you, and it's how we want to see you as well. We'll say that, and still people will come with a full face of makeup.
Right.
And we actually have had situations, one a while ago, where a girl came that way and we thought she was pretty, but it wasn't like, oh, we want to talk to her more. And she came back a year later and we were like, oh, you're beautiful. You're interesting. And she wasn't even really, she was a little on the shorter side for us, 5'8", but she told us, and we went and looked back, and she had come before and she looked so different because she was very tan. She had a lot of makeup on. Her hair was very styled. And when she came in the second time, just in her natural state, we loved her.
Yeah.
So the first thing I would say, the reason we say those things is because that's how you would go on a casting if you were in New York or Paris or wherever. So it's to your advantage to arrive the way that we ask you to arrive.
Yes.
And the other thing is don't just be yourself. Like it's not a
Pose. Don't
performance.
pose.
Yes, just relax and just because if
Well,
it's,
I mean, it is hard to do
I
that.
know it is. I
It
get
is
it.
hard for especially a young person to go,
It
okay,
is.
turn around, we want to see you. You look great. I mean, it's like this is a quote that you had on your website. Modeling isn't a beauty contest.
Yes, it's not. It's not. It just means that we're not looking for perfection. We're not looking for typical beauty standards. And I would say we're not looking for the girl that the guy in the sports bar thinks is hot. We're looking for an interesting person. And a lot of times through the years, some of the things that somebody is most insecure about is the thing that the modeling industry loves the most
Like
about
a
them.
gap in the tooth or something like that. Right.
High forehead, curly hair, or it's the things that make you different.
Freckles.
Yes, all of it. It's that interesting thing. And it usually ends up that the person ends up appreciating the thing that maybe they hated growing up.
Right. Well,
Which I think,
let's fast forward to the fashion camp, the coaching weekend, and the master
yes,
class. What
yes.
are they and when are they? And how
Okay.
can people kind of check it out online and maybe sign up for it?
The fashion camp will be posting on social the links to sign up. It's June 8th and 9th. I just confirmed another really interesting. She used to be the booking editor at Vogue.
Oh, cool.
So that is June 8th and 9th. And I'm moving the masterclass to later on in June. All of that will be on our social. It's also on our website, Mother Model Management. It's on my website, which is mothermaryclarke.com. And it's also on all of our social that they can go find out more, click, and they can also DM us if they have questions.
Fantastic. And I know that you are kind of pivoting also, not pivoting, but adding to your repertoire more writing and managing and things like that. And you're
Yeah,
hosting, is it a women's
a women's
symposium?
event.
Yeah. What is that?
We did one last spring, and we had an amazing panel of entrepreneurial women. We had hair and makeup stylists. It was just an amazing experience. So we're bringing it back in September. I believe it's the third weekend. I should know that date, but the 21st and 22nd.
It's on your website, I'm sure.
Yes. Okay.
What's the realistic start age that you want to see somebody, of course,
far as
with parental guidance? Yeah.
I feel like starting around 15, 16 is ideal. Every once in a while, we've had a few girls that are younger than that. One of the things that we really focus on development-wise, communication skills and a healthy relationship with nutrition and movement, the friendships that they forge, the way that Mother focuses on our development is very much a team effort. And I think one of the most rewarding aspects outside of the accomplishments of these successful careers is what we hear and see from the girls and their parents about the transformation and the confidence that comes from working on the things that we work on. You know, it's hard to be a teenager, especially in today's world.
Yeah.
To be able to really help them navigate it and feel good about themselves is super important to us.
Well, you have one of the coolest jobs in the world, and I've always admired what you and Jeff have done. And I
Thank you.
follow you religiously on social media just to watch your antics and your shenanigans, your model nanigans. It's so if moms, dads out there say, hey, I think my kid this might be for them,
Yes.
where should they go?
Mother Model Management. And for anybody else just interested in the world outside of that and what that can look like, mothermaryclarke.com.
Fantastic. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time on More to Say with Randy Naughton. And don't forget, everybody, like, subscribe, review, share, all that stuff. Some really fun conversations coming your way in the future as well. So thanks for joining us.
This has been More to Say with Randy Naughton. Interesting conversations with interesting people. Be sure to like or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.